Hello, Nevada County. Welcome to a fantastic webinar tonight, hosted by our very own Ethan Hunter. We're going to be talking about Woocommerce, which is an e-commerce solution for WordPress, which is open source and free. Now, there's a whole lot to unpack with that. You may not be familiar with open source software, but you know the word free, right? So that's a good start. Uh, so many small businesses in 2020 really rose to the occasion and rapidly got some way to sell stuff online going like that. They had to, and really saved a lot of small businesses. But a couple of years down the road, maybe you've had the same jury-rigged site up this whole time. You've got a fantastic website. Maybe you spent a whole lot of time and energy crafting, branding, making it look really good and unique. And then people go into the sales side of it, and it looks like every other website out there. So part of the appeal of this is, branding, maintaining your branding from, the frequently asked questions tab of your website to the sales, and making sure people know that they're buying from you and not your competitor. So I'm sure Ethan has a lot more to go into about this. We're going to have a great webinar from him, but I just kind of wanted to set the idea of why this is something that's cool and that you should look into doing, because branding is so key right now. There's so many options out there, and you really want to stand up from the pack. You want people to know, if you've taken the effort to tell them why you're so awesome, that they're buying from you. So I'm going to get out of the way and let Ethan do a whole lot more of this talking, although I'll be chiming in with questions here and so forth. So take it away, Ethan.
Cool. Thanks, David. Yeah, so tonight's talk is about Woocommerce as an e-commerce platform, like you said. Let's go ahead and go back. Like, first off, in order to have a Woocommerce website, we need to have a WordPress website originally. So one of the cool things, and you mentioned it, is open source. So what's really great is so we need a website, and we use WordPress, and that's open source, right? So free, right? And that's pretty amazing in itself. But on top of that, WooCommerce itself is also an open source web application, or we call them plugins in the WordPress world. And so basically you put that on top of, or in conjunction with WordPress. And so that's free too. And the software is free, but let's also be clear that you still have to buy your domain name, and you'll still have to have hosting. So it's not just a free website, but it's free tools to build a website. So I'm an evangelist for WordPress, because that's what I work in and that's what I believe in. So, one thing that people probably aren't aware of is that, that WordPress itself is 40% of all websites on the internet. So that is, a big deal right there. That tells you a lot why why I'm such a fan of WordPress. Another thing too is, before we get into WooCommerce, is let's just kind of backtrack and talk about some of the things that other people are using for websites and e-commerce, and that would be Shopify, Squarespace, maybe Etsy or an Amazon store. And while those sites or platforms seem really awesome and available and maybe even user friendly, one of the drawbacks is there's this kind of overlining cost. So you've got a monthly cost, which might similar to hosting, but with WordPress you can find pretty inexpensive hosting, and especially if you're willing to do some of the own kind of like security or update stuff on your own, then that'll save you too. But sites like Shopify usually will charge you a loading fee just to put a product on. Same with Etsy, you have to actually pay to have that, whereas something like WooCommerce, you don't need to do that. And so the reason why I really push WordPress is because you own the site. You go to Squarespace, yeah, you're using their platform, but they technically, they own the site. if you get frustrated with Squarespace and service, or it's not scalable for you or whatever, well, you're kind of locked in, you know. Whereas WordPress, you're not locked in. If you want to change your host, you want to host it yourself, or you want to move to a different company, or you need some kind of tweak, those kind of stores or those kind of sites don't really give you that possibility. So that's kind of why I'm a big advocate of WordPress. And so and then the biggest solution for e-commerce right now is for WordPress is Woocommerce. And here's another percentage. Woocommerce is 30% of all e-commerce sites. So if it's an e-commerce site, 30% is using Woocommerce. So 40% of all websites are WordPress, and 30% of all e-commerce sites are WooCommerce. So to me, that speaks volumes. So eventually I'll go ahead and screen share it, and we'll get into just kind of showing you a site. But before we do that, and we'll kind of, try to run through some of the basic features that WooCommerce has out of the box. But the first question to ask is, why WooCommerce? Well, we already touched on one. It's free. Kind of touched on another one, which is WooCommerce and WordPress, and that's customizable. And I think that that's something that you're really touching on, and is that you mentioned was branding. A lot of Squarespace or Shopify, they're easy, but a lot of times they're generic, or they all look the same, or you're going to have to spend a little bit extra money to make it customizable to your brand and kind of set things apart. So I don't use Shopify too much, and I have messed around with Squarespace, and I know you can buy like kind of themes or templates to where there's kind of a shift from that design. But then again, that's also another fee, and so that's one really thing that's really great about WooCommerce is free and customizable. So you can set yourself apart, or you can change things as you need them, as you expand or do different things like that. So and then the other thing is it's scalable. Small grandma mom and pop shops, they use WooCommerce. So do really, really big e-commerce stores. So that says a lot too about how scalable it is. Or say your mom and pop store, and all of a sudden, wow, this is really taking off, but like all of a sudden Squarespace just becomes kind of almost like inhibiting, because you really can't scale as fast as you need to. So that's one of the really cool things that's with WooCommerce, and talking about customizing and scalability, WooCommerce is free, but you can also get either free plugins or paid plugins. So you can spend some money on your shop in WooCommerce as an addition to if you need certain scalability, or you want a certain way of shipping, or you're a membership site and you need a certain amount of that. So that kind of jumps into the next part of the fourth part of what I really like about WooCommerce is out of the box, there's just a ton of options. Do you want digital? Do you want like t-shirts? Do you want memberships? So all these things, affiliate marketing, all these things are things that WooCommerce is easily just kind of out of the box allows you the option of. Whereas other sites, they're really kind of geared towards, certain types of content or ways of selling things. So to me, that's also one of the great, super awesome options with WooCommerce, is that there's so much out of the box that you can do. So I think that's a pretty good place to start as far as what WooCommerce is and kind of what WordPress is. You feel like we're there, David? Any questions?
I think the one thing I want to point out too is yes, you're going to have fees if you choose to use some of the more advanced plugins, but they're not necessarily going to take a percentage of your transactions like Squarespace does. Those sites are grabbing a piece of the action. And as you're talking about scaling up, the more business you do, the more money you're giving to Squarespace. So that's a big factor of like, even if you've got small sales numbers. If you're selling an expensive item, those Squarespace fees are going to stack up pretty quickly, and that's money out of your pocket.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times we'll be using, and we'll get into that for a second, but we can bring that up real quick, is yeah, payment gateways, right? So Squarespace gives all these kind of fees, whereas typically, other than your hosting costs and things like that, PayPal or say Stripe, which is really popular as a gateway, they just kind of have a fixed percentage, and so you kind of know where you're at with that. And so, yeah, that's the pretty awesome thing about Woocommerce is you have a lot more controls on those costs. And not to say that every plugin that you use with Woocommerce is going to cost you. There's a lot of plugins out there for additional features or functionality is what we like to call it, where they are free plugins, or what we have, especially in the WordPress world, is we have freemium and then premium. So it's like, here's some basic functionality in a plugin, and it might suit your needs, and that's also scalable. So like, hey, I need the solution, but I'm not quite there monetarily yet or whatever. So I can start with the free solution, and then as things progress, if I need more addition to that, then you can do it. And one of the great things about WooCommerce too is that there's WooCommerce, but then there's all these people that are creating the plugins or this additional functionality that that are out there. It's very highly developed. So it's one of the e-commerce, or as far as I'm concerned, it's the e-commerce platform that is the most versatile to match whatever your needs are. So yeah, so I think that's definitely something to mention too.
Cool.
All right, so we'll go ahead and screen share. Okay, so you guys can see my screen, right? All right, so this is when the pandemic hit, everybody was on e-commerce, and I needed to create a site to show people that I can do e-commerce. And so I learned the whole process really by creating this site here in Nevada County Swag. This is a really basic site. And so we'll kind of go through it, but you can see here, this is just a basic, merchandising, site, and pretty set up, kind of pretty similar to a lot of sites that you see. I just kind of went with a really basic design. So anyways, that's this is what we call the front end of a website. And now we're going to go into the back end, and that's kind of what we're going to try to dissect here. And there's a lot there to dissect. So just want to see if I'm loading. Okay. So for those who don't know, there's a fire in our area, and I think the internet might be a little bit weird. So if my pages load slow, that's why. Okay, so we're on the back end of a WordPress website. All right, so basically, I have a lot of different things over here on top of besides WooCommerce, right? But basically, you get the WooCommerce plugin, and I'm not going to go through it because that would take too much time. And you install it on a WordPress website, and basically what you'll get is a few things in your dashboard, and they're basically all grouped right here. Typically, it's under WooCommerce, and we have WooCommerce, and you can see here. So the menu opens. We kind of have a base or a dashboard. The first entrance. We have orders. We have customers, reports. We have some settings, some status, and extensions. Right. So that's kind of some of the basic kind of ways of setting up your e-commerce site. Right. And then we also have some things like products. So this is where you will manage all your products. You can see your products, add a product, add categories, tags. You can see here, I actually have set up a Facebook, kind of it syncs with, my shop goes to Facebook, and then I have a shop on Facebook. And that's the other really cool thing about WooCommerce is that you can integrate into other platforms, Facebook being one. I think Instagram, you can do some stuff, but I don't think there's a shop page there yet. Facebook during the pandemic too started trying to we need to have some e-commerce here on there too. So they kind of made some concessions towards that. So that's what you'll see here with the extra thing there is this. So that's another added thing that Woocommerce allows you to do, is kind of extend your market, your store. Like, not only do you have a website now, but you also have a Facebook account that you can send stuff to. So sorry, the phone's ringing. All right, and then we also have a really great place here in WooCommerce that's analytics. So it can give you all these reports and all this information and all these things that you need to kind of look at reports. Basically, what are we selling? What's the orders? What's the categories? Taxes, coupons. You can see this. What's in stock? And that's really awesome. It allows you to basically manage your whole site, and just in this few areas. And these really become insightful too, right? So, all right, so back up, and then we'll go ahead and go to the marketing. So marketing is really cool too. It gives you an overview, and then it gives you a place for like coupons and things like that. So, this is a place where you can set coupons, or you can set like, well, if they pay a certain price, then they get free shipping or things like that. So that's kind of these 4 things is basically what you see in a WooCommerce site, right? So we'll go ahead and just jump in here real quick, and we'll I think we'll go to settings, because I think that's a really good place to start. So we'll go into WooCommerce settings, and great. Okay, so here, like when you first install WooCommerce, is kind of going to give you, and this is the really cool thing too about WooCommerce. People are like, it seems really complicated. Squarespace seems more approachable. WooCommerce, when you start and you install the website, it kind of gives you this kind of wizard, if you will, and walks you through like, okay, let's set up the store. These are the things that you need, and ask you different questions. So you can see here, like, you can set up your basic stuff, your countries that you sell to, your shipping locations, your default customer locations. You can set up, how your currency looks. Same with products. You can set up own internet. Yeah, so you're right here. So you can set up all your basic stuff, like, is it pounds? Is it units? You can set up how your reviews are. That's another cool thing about WooCommerce, is right out of the box, it allows your, a place for your customers to, add reviews. So you don't have to like try to figure out, okay, I want to get reviews now. Like, no, they just let you do it. And, you can either turn it off or turn it on, and you can verify too, right? So you don't have spam, like people just kind of spamming you. That's something to consider. And then, they have different things so that you can set up your inventory, is it a downloadable product, approved downloadable directories. And then, there's obviously a lot more that you can do here. Right away, you can set up your taxes.
That's cool.
Yeah. And, and also WooCommerce has kind of free plugins that'll come in there if you need to kind of just do a little bit more. Right, so immediately you can kind of set up your, your basic tax structure. You can go into a lot more stuff here. We're not going to touch too much on it because we'll bog down in just one section. So you can see, you can set up your taxes. You can even set up your shipping, and then we'll do payments, and then we'll just kind of talk about emails too as well. So here's another place. So now you can set up multiple shipping zones. You can specify different shipping zones, and is it free shipping or is it international shipping? So there's a charge, there's those different things that you can do. You can even set up not shipping, store pickup, so and maybe it's not shipping, maybe you have a downloadable product. So that's something, you can do too. So you can see you have shipping options here, you have shipping classes, are some of the things that you kind of help you define how you're going to organize that shipping, because everyone's got different like aspects of how they're going to maybe possibly handling their shipping. And then you can do payments. So this is kind of where you would set up things like PayPal, Stripe, maybe other Paywall paywalls, but I would say, your basic ones are going to be PayPal and Stripe. But you can see here, like, yeah, I can set up direct transfers and check payments and cash on delivery and, all these just endless options, and that's just a few, this is just kind of what they're out of the box on. And then another great thing is like, you need automation, right? So you don't want to go and check your dashboard and, all right, did somebody, buy that t-shirt? All this stuff will just tell you right away, like, okay, hey, a new order, sends me my email. Hey, cancel order, send me the email. All these things you can integrate in different ways. Even, the customer getting their invoice and, hey, you did purchase this from me. I'm not a bogus site and just took your money. So this is a really great feature, I think, right here, is just being able to allow for a certain amount of automation, and it gives you a level of comfort so that you don't have to as much time management. Plus, it's just really professional. Like who doesn't like to have a confirmation email or, thank you, even tracking stuff. And I don't think you can do it right out of the box, but there are plugins where it's like, hey, you like that t-shirt, now give me a review, and reminding your customer or things like that. So, and then there's a lot of different integrations and stuff like that too, that you can do with Woocommerce. So, my integration that I focused on was Facebook, a shop. Because to me, I thought, well, gosh, if I have a Facebook web page and a person goes and they're looking at that and they see something they like, why wouldn't I want to just, immediately engage that customer,
Totally.
And now you can, with Shopify, chances are, or with Squarespace, well, guess what? That's an additional thing, and so we go, oh, this is really easy. But then, like you were saying, there's all these hidden costs. They start adding up and you're like, hey, man, this website thing's really, really not great for me because I'm spending more money than I'm really, making. Whereas here you can really scale things like, oh, okay, I'm making money. All right, now we're going to scale up, So that's exactly, why I'm such an evangelist around it. All right, so let's go into orders really quick. And this website doesn't really get a lot of activity. I don't spend a lot of time on it. It's very organic. I don't do any advertising. I literally just tried to SEO it and do the best I could to, just get people looking at it. But you can see here, we've got some orders. So immediately it shows you all your orders completed, the dates, the costs, show if it's uncompleted or, canceled, and these will all be different color codes. You can filter things. So you're like, I needed to know when that was 3 months ago. Boom, there you go, right? And then another thing is really great too, is like, you kind of, as you're having this website, you're getting data. People are giving you emails and things like that. So now you're creating like a database all of a sudden with all your customers. So, this is a place where, look, now you have all this stuff. So we'll just skip by that really quick because there's probably some personal stuff there. But yeah, so that's kind of like a really cool feature is that, here you have orders, you can manage customers. Now we can get reports on customers and stocks and, oh, I need a report on taxes. It's my quarterly time. I need to, send off for all the sales tax, that I do. You can do that. So that's all allows you to do everything in one spot. Okay, so now let's go down to products. So products is pretty cool. Obviously, that's what you need for a site, right? Is products, services, digital content, whatever, so here we can see everything kind of on a full view, right? Like I've got, what it is, and I can go in here and I can edit it and do a bunch of stuff. The product images shows me that, yeah, it's in stock. This is, and that's the great thing too, is that you can set up like, all right, I've got 5 t-shirts. And so it'll say, okay, now you got 4 t-shirts, you sold one. All right, now you got 3 t-shirts, you sold another. So it allows you to kind of like see that. And then it'll be like, the customer will go to buy it and you're like, oh no, like I already sold all the 5 t-shirts. Well, guess what? You don't have to worry about it because you just set it up and WooCommerce or the website knows, well, I only have 5 t-shirts. So once I sell them, it saves you the hassle, right? The runaround of having to go and talk to that customer and maybe disappoint them. Here you don't have to do that. So there's a lot of stuff here that you can do, a lot of different filtering. You can import or export your product. So say I already have the database, I've done all the homework, then there are ways of being able to create that data and just bring it in. So you don't have to sit there and type and drag every image in and do all that. So that's a really great thing about products, right? So there's that, and endless amount of products you can add. And I'm showing you basically a website that is a merchandise, so it's a tangible item. Like I said, there's digital, there's membership, there's all kinds of ways of creating products and different things. So this is just kind of one view of one type of product. So that's another really great thing to look at. And then we can kind of look at analytics really quick too, right? So
one of the cool things that struck me as we've been going through all this was the automation side, whereas I feel like that's a large part of you can get the personality of your business out of that, where you're personalizing that confirmation email message, you're personalizing how they get those automated things, and it's not just congratulations you bought this. It's hey, thanks so much for supporting my small business, and it gives you that opportunity to really make it your own.
Absolutely. And Squarespace and say Shopify or things like that, they do offer some of that automation. But once again, it's a cost. And here you're getting some of that level without really initial cost. You can get $6 to $10 a month hosting. Your domain names, $12 a year. So you can imagine, like for someone trying to start something up, or me, this is kind of just a hobby site in a way, I'm able to set up a site that kind of does its own thing. So, to me, that's really great. And so you can see here with the analytics, right? So, it just kind of shows you, all right, obviously my sales are down, but it'll give you kind of a wide range, or like, hey, this many of this sold. Right away, it's giving you these analytics. I didn't set this up. This is all the data that is created inside WooCommerce that already does it. I don't have to do that added thing. Whereas with a lot of websites or platforms, you do have to do a little bit more tinkering yourself. Yeah, so you can see like here you can go into really looking at specific things like products or revenue or the orders, or how much of a variations am I selling categories. How's my coupons doing? What's the taxes looking like? Am I getting a lot of downloads? Where's my stock at right now? I don't care how much I'm selling. Like, do I have anything to sell? Or so all these great things in just the analytics alone that allows people to really kind of see where they're at. A lot of times old school, it's like you'd have to have a point of sale system or something to start tracking all that data to figure it out. Well, WooCommerce does that for you. And then the last thing is then there's a lot more to it, but basically you can see like, okay, so here's the marketing side, and I've installed Facebook for WooCommerce, which is totally free, by the way. Again, here's me pushing, like, not only are you having your own website, but now you're over on in Meta's hands, and let's face it, that's a huge bonus, at least for me in my book. What's the one website we all go to once a day? Facebook. So right there, that's a huge selling point in itself. Like, hey, have a WooCommerce site, because now you can also reach customers on Facebook. And so one of the things I really like about the marketing thing, and WooCommerce kind of changed this about a year ago, because the coupons actually used to be in WooCommerce, but then they just like, you know what? We've got a WooCommerce area, we've got a products area, we've got an analytics area, but we really do need a marketing area. So this is a place where you can, put in any kind of code or coupons you want. And this is great too. You can make coupons that are, only good for, from July to, August, or if you buy this much, you'll get this much off. So these are all the kind of things that you can do. And, you can see all, there's other extensions in here that they're even recommending And that's the other thing too. Woocommerce is always throwing these little things in, like, hey, here's some information, or did you know, or check out this free thing, and gift coupons, all these things that maybe Squarespace will set you up, but then there's all this added value, like you're saying. Then you have to buy another thing, buy another thing, buy another thing, and some of these plugins may be purchasable too, but there's a lot out there that it isn't. And another thing that yeah, so that's kind of that. So another thing that is great about WooCommerce, right, is the customizability of it. Is your ability to track all of it, to scale it. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. So, right, so here's a basic website. We'll just, okay, so I've set it up, and we can go into t-shirts, and I'm just gonna kind of show you like a quick product overview. So we go into t-shirts, and immediately it's displaying all this stuff. So it's got all this great information, and literally, like, I didn't do too much design tweak to this. I kind of made some branding, like colors and font selections and things I want, but this is fairly out of the box of WooCommerce. So, there's a lot more customizing you can do, make your buttons, different things. And these are the things that like Squarespace is really limited in. You can't really do a lot of tweaking to Squarespace, something like that, without having some additional fees, or not at all. And this is another thing I wanted to mention real quick too, is WordPress is really SEO friendly. It's built that way. It's also getting better at optimizing, which we've talked about in past talks about, making your website load faster and things like that. Whereas Squarespace is still playing catch up, but so, those can be detrimental in the end to a search engine, or people finding you. So that's what's really great about WooCommerce, is that it too is SEO friendly, right? So it's on top of WordPress, so that's SEO friendly. And I guess I'm throwing this word around for those who don't know what SEO is. It's search engine optimization. So that's like making Google think you're really awesome, and it puts you higher in those search pages. So you type in Nevada County t-shirts, then you're going to be at the first or second, versus like maybe if you don't have really good SEO, you might be on the second page of Google, and that's not what you want. All right, so you see, there's a bunch of different ways to basically all display it. And so let's just jump in here with this t-shirt here, and you see the pricing on it, the category, the name, the image, your buttons. Right away, it pretty much just does that for you. You don't have to go like, oh, I need to set all that up. You put it on the back end for products, and then immediately, right, like now you have all these things here. Actually, this one wasn't good because it's only one type of shirt. But so down, oh, there it goes. I thought so. I thought I had more than that. So you can put different images. Like this one, I actually decided to do face forward, but I could have made this one the primary, so it'd be the first thing the customer sees. And then you see you have variations here, and immediately those just all sync right up. You've got your basic kind of descriptions. You've got a place for reviews. One thing I really like about WordPress too, WooCommerce, is immediately it gives you this upsell, right? So these, like down below, after all this product, like, hey, there's some other stuff you might like, and so it's really working, with helping you market your product, making sure that you're reaching people and potentially getting that lead, or that conversion, we like to call it, the sales, because that's really what we're trying to get people to do when we go to usually an e-commerce site. And then of course you have all this customizability, right? So you can put all kinds of variations, like color or sizes, things like that, and then it has really great things like basically you can immediately, out of the box, you have a cart, so you have everything that's, going there, and all your information, that you can do. Obviously my cart's empty. But that's basically another really cool thing. And a lot of that's kind of in the settings originally, so you'll have a purchase, maybe you'll have your taxes, and you'll have your shipping all in there. I personally use a company called Printful, to do all my products. So They ship everything. This is what's really great about what I'm doing. And this is just get a little bit of a side note. So I use what we call print on demand companies, and we've talked about that recently. But basically, I allow that company to do everything. I create the product, they print the stuff, they ship it, they do the taxes, which is an option. You can do your own taxes or not. I let them do the taxes, and they do all the returns and all that stuff. So the only thing that I have to do is make sure that there's money on my card when that comes through, and that order goes through, and then just kind of do some basic kind of tracking and following. But, you can imagine if you get a really happening site and you've got 400 purchases a day, you're not going to be doing all that. So that's why you need automation, to do that. And that's what really allows scalability, and then you can go back and start using all those, analytics and things like that to kind of gauge where you're at. So that would be kind of, I guess, the main things that I would say about, like, kind of just the quick tour we did with Woocommerce there is, again, kind of recapping, it's WordPress, it's free. Woocommerce is free. Woocommerce and WordPress are both free and customizable and scalable. And Woocommerce especially has a lot of stuff out of the box. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Can always deep dive into one of these things. Like I've literally spent hours like trying to figure out taxes or shipping for somebody. Like I had a client recently that really needed like a certain way of shipping something. So we had to really deep dive in on that. And you can get really granular in that, whereas things were Shopify or maybe, Squarespace, I would imagine, is probably even the one that people are using more for kind of DIY stuff because of its ease or, perceived ease. And so that's the other thing I want to talk about. Like, you're like, oh, dude, Ethan, you just like told me a lot. It seems really, really, really overwhelming. Like, I want to do Squarespace because, and that's the comment I get all the time. Like, yeah, WordPress is awesome, but there's a huge learning curve. And, honestly, it really isn't that bad. Like I said, when you first install it, it kind of walks you through that. And then, I learned by YouTube tutorials and building, and I'm not like some highly educated person who learned all this stuff. I don't consider myself a high whatever. So if I can do it, you can do it. And that's one thing I want to really point out is that with working with WordPress and especially WooCommerce is there's so much community support, education, and then there's a huge range of people out there like myself who are working on WordPress sites. So there's a lot of people to reach locally. You can hire people, cheap on Fiverr or, Upwork. I mean, there's so much, things that you can do you can do yourself, like DIY or, have a little bit of help or, like like you jumped into WordPress, yeah. Probably maybe even about the same time I did, right? So
it's the sort of thing where there's such a community out there, you're never the first person to encounter a problem. Or if you are, like, there's going to be plenty of people like, that's cool. How did you get that error? Because I think that's the thing that people who are so tied into the Apple, the Microsoft, just the world of you pay for your device, you get your software, you're good. But there's a whole other world of software out there that's open source. And that's the beauty of it. It's a community. And, if you've got a problem, there's going to be a Facebook forum, there's going to be a WordPress forum, there's going to be someone who can help you. And they're even going to be interested in your problem because maybe they've been battling something similar. And here's an opportunity to be like, okay, I couldn't figure out my problem. Let's work on this one and see what insight I get into mine. Like, I was working on, I made a site for my music, and it was, I was having trouble with the theme, and someone had also had a similar problem with the theme. We walked through each other, and they figured out what was wrong with mine, and I figured out what was wrong with theirs, because You know, it,
Just
you
switch
can
themes.
stare, yeah, you can stare at a problem for hours and just be completely blind to what's actually wrong. And a pair of fresh eyes really helps. And you get into a site like Squarespace and Shopify, yeah, they've got customer service, but it's, it's proprietary. When you've got proprietary software, it's going to take a lot longer to figure out because you have to go through their customer service tree. You have to go through
Yes.
their system.
Yes.
This is see who else has your problem. Figure it
Yeah.
out.
So I worked on a couple of Squarespace sites, and I was doing some optimization, right? So
Yeah.
which make the pages load faster, make the images more compressed so they load faster. And I tried to do that to a Squarespace site, and I was like, oh gosh, they control everything. And then you Google stuff and you go, all right, how do I make this better? And they're like, well, you can do this and you can do this and you can do this, but there's only so much you can do is what you see. And like, yeah, Squarespace knows, so they're trying to, stay up on that. But WordPress, what is really cool is yes, you own it, even though it's open source, it's yours. So you can go do whatever you want to the code. If you want to change it and you got a good coder or somebody, I mean, we do that a lot of times. There's people that are writing just totally code heavy WordPress websites. So if you come across some sort of weird use case that you need in particular for your site, you can do it with WordPress. You may have to hire a developer to help you on some things, but you can do it with WordPress. Whereas these other e-commerce sites don't really provide that, because you're right, they're proprietary. Which gets me back to the same thing, is that I own my site. You don't own your site if it's not on WordPress or you built it HTML. If you're going to Squarespace, Shopify, Etsy, that's all you get. And to me, that seems one, it's costly and very narrowing. And I can see somebody starting there, but what I worry is that somebody starts, say it's Squarespace, but it doesn't meet their needs in, say, 7 or 8 months or a year or two. And now what are they going to do? They're kind of beholden to Squarespace and hoping that there's a solution, and that they have some support, or I always say, like, start with WordPress. Even if it costs you a little bit extra, start with WordPress. That site's yours. And you say, well, what if I have a falling out with my developer, or I don't like my host? Well, great. Just pick up your site and move it. And that's something that Squarespace will never offer. So those are the things that's why I kind of, look down on those. They're not bad options. So I don't want people to think that, oh, I hate them. But what I feel like is that you really do, you have more chance of success, in my view, and starting with a WordPress site and then putting it on WooCommerce and slowly building it. And YouTube is your friend. There's a ton of tutorials out there. You can find somebody you like. I was just looking it up when I was prepping for this meeting. There's like 4-hour tutorials on some of these guys. And so they're really deep diving and asking you those questions, or like, hey man, I'm not going to spend 4 hours. So I can set up my site, I figure that out, but I'm really hung up on how to do my taxes. And you can do that. And there's just so much more option in the sphere of WordPress and in WooCommerce than there is in any e-commerce site. And that's why 40% of the internet is WordPress and 30% of all e-commerce sites are WooCommerce. And that makes sense.
And, we talked a little bit about going deeper into the code and really personalizing your site, but you can also, WordPress has this, I think it's Gutenberg block editor. And it's literally, it's a visual editor. I went in and I was working on my dad's website. He's got some, books. He's a professor, and he had some student code out the website like 10 years ago. I go in there, converted everything to block editor, and he hasn't changed anything yet, but he could. It's extremely user friendly, and you can go down the rabbit hole and make it more complicated. You can go as deep as you want. But you can also stay pretty surface level and interact with it from the just graphical interface. You're not having to write code. WordPress does a lot of that for you.
Yeah, and WordPress, WordPress is a nonprofit. It's an open source, right? So let's maybe just give it a distinction for maybe those who don't understand. WordPress.com and WordPress.org are two different things, right? So WordPress.com is kind of a hosting kind of thing, and WordPress.org has some hosting too, but it's basically the organization that has come up around WordPress. There's a huge team of people and enthusiasts dedicated on improving just WordPress. So there, I mean, there's rollouts probably every 2 or 3 months, it feels like, of an update, or we're at version 9, but now it's 9.2, things like that. So whereas Squarespace or different things, you might just kind of, they're rolling with profit and how they can manage it, where here you have a community of people who are literally you freely giving their time to improve that sphere. Like one of the most released earliest the last update had a lot of features around ADA compliance, or well, WordPress content accessibility guidelines, right? So how people who have certain types of disabilities access that. So is Squarespace improving that? Yeah, maybe, but not at the rate like, say, WordPress is. And to me, I love the open source community. I think that all the things should be free, and I think that makes innovation happen quicker, and people can really move on lines that move faster, because they're not held up by the bottom line, and where that input is. So again, that's kind of why I'm eventually just kind of an evangelist for WordPress, and obviously Woocommerce as the e-commerce site.
I want to kind of cycle back to, you're saying maybe you start out with the Squarespace and then you outgrow it 7 to 8 months later. The other huge incentive, and you talk about this quite a bit, is the search engine optimization. You're trying to grow your business. You're trying to launch a new website. You want that to be popping up in Google as soon as possible. You don't want it to be like, oh, I'm slowly building my business. Let Google help build your business. Make it so you're popping up like that. Your site loads quickly. And I mean, particularly in Nevada County and in rural America, period, you don't want a website that loads slow, because people just won't use it. Like, you're out there, you've got maybe 2 bars of service. You're trying to, let's say, order a customized easy up for your backyard to get a little bit of shade. You want it to work. You don't want to be like trying 5 times and have it time out.
Yeah, or even then, Google has a ton of algorithms, and there's different things that have a percentage in value of that, and one of those is optimization. Does your site load fast? Is it broken? Things like that. So that was one of the things that I didn't like with Squarespace, that it was really hard for me to go in and say, okay, you have this one image that's way too big, and we just need to do this thing to it. But Squarespace was so convoluted in how to do that it was kind of like, yeah, just go get a new whatever and do that. And Squarespace is, if you actually do the research, they're totally, they know that their optimization isn't ideal in that. So, but those are the things that sometimes I think that somebody who isn't totally geeky, in a way, doesn't understand that, and it becomes a little bit cumbersome for them. So they say, oh, this is a great site. Like, so I just had somebody give me a Squarespace site, and this is a taboo even if you have a WordPress site, but and they said, hey, I need this site to load faster. And I said, well, I can't, because you have an image that's 12 megabytes. So there's no way that I'm going to be able to do anything, because a whole web page should only be 2 or 3, and Squarespace doesn't even care that's an thing. So and there are some tools in the tool shed that WordPress would allow you to do, where Squarespace just doesn't allow that. So I mean, that's more of a design thing, but it also speaks to the platform that WordPress is and WooCommerce is that it really allows you to address those issues. again, 40% of the internet is using it. WordPress just started out as a little bloggy software, but I mean, it's way past that now. So now you're looking at people like Nike and different people are using WordPress. I think that speaks volumes to the application itself.
Oh man, this has been awesome. I don't mean to completely trash Squarespace all the time, but
I know
it's the
felt bad.
contrast, right? It's the like it loads slow. It doesn't let you customize stuff. Doesn't let you, this is the advantage. It's do it right from the beginning, and you're going to be a lot happier. And
Yeah.
you can grow. You can grow and expand, and not have that moment of, oh no, how do we go to that next level, and having to rethink everything at that stage.
And spending all that money up front,
Yeah.
even though it was only $30 a month, but you spent it all up this month, and then you add all these plugins and you did all this work. Well, guess what? It's not enough now. And then what do I do? Now I got to go, re-spend this. Whereas starting with a really simple WordPress, install, a lot of people that are looking at those kind of, easier DIY sites, they don't have they're not coming with a ton of stuff, right? They're just going to start something small, and then they're going to kind of add to it, and this is a way of doing that. And like you said too, WordPress itself is getting better. Like we just went with the Gutenberg blocks, or they're calling it the block editor now. So before, I think most people associate WordPress with the classic WordPress, where you go in and you only have so many kind of ways of displaying stuff, and it looks really old. But that's kind of not what's happening anymore with WordPress, and that's just WordPress out of the box, because I use a page builder we call Elementor. So that's another way of kicking it up one notch, right? And making your site completely customizable and designed, you really meet your brand. And so that's to me right there. Even before you do all the ins and outs of having a cool WooCommerce site, is the ability that WordPress allows you right there to like you said, to design something that doesn't look like every other Squarespace site. Because the Squarespace sites are very similar, and yes, there is some customization, but a lot of times people won't even, that's a little bit overwhelming for a DIYer, maybe. So they just, like you said, they just go with it. And so then there's 30 sites out there that kind of look the same.
More like 200 sites out there.
Yeah. And some people I think feel comfortable that, like, okay, well, it looks good because I made that. And I'm not saying that there isn't some value in that, but I think overall it, really being able to expand your design and match your brand or what you need. A lot of times, Squarespace or Shopify or something's only going to let you, have your shop a certain way. Whereas WooCommerce, like, no, I want to just, have this. So you really immediately can focus in on something. Or, I want my shop, the first half above the fold when the page loads, feature Santa Claus t-shirts, or ugly sweater stuff for Christmas. It's a lot easier to do that on WooCommerce and WordPress than it is to do it on these other kind of, pay for sites. That just like, nope, you're just going to have this t-shirts and hoodies, and that's all you get on your first fold. And that's not very engaging with the customer. We want to, part of our purchasing is emotion, right? So we want to engage that emotion, and I think that's part of that customizable or design aspect to that. So
this has been just awesome, man. We are getting close to the end of the hour. So I know. It's we both like WordPress. We like open source. It's fun stuff to get into.
Yeah, I told my wife when I was coming to this meeting, I was like, man, it's just really busy and things like that. And I'm like, boy, I'm like, I don't know if I'm prepared. I think I am. I know what I'm doing, but I was like, well, luckily I'm really enthusiastic and I'm super winded.
Any final thoughts you wanna share?
Yeah, I think let's just touch bases again, something that I've hammered home. Woocommerce and WordPress are free. They're open source. That's super cool. 40% of the internet is WordPress. 30% of all e-commerce sites are, WooCommerce. It's free. It's customizable. It's scalable. It's out of the box. It's really great, and the community is there to support you. So don't let the barrier of it feeling like it's too much steer you away from it. I really think it's the best and most appropriate option for most e-commerce sites.
That's just awesome. I want to thank you so much for giving this awesome webinar. I'm David Carroll with the Nevada County Tech Connection. You've been listening to Ethan Hunter tell it like it is.
Yep.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, David.